Welcome back to day 4 on the internet. I'm starting to remember now just how difficult it can be to pump out a new video every single day. But let's get started with Mess Cook Malicious Complies for Special Meal, resulting in 6 months of Brussels sprouts being shot out of the torpedo tubes. Well, with a title like that, we're off to a great start. So background, my father was in the Navy and submarine force for 35 years. He does not discuss anything related to this. He's very reserved and secretive. The only reason I know this story is the chaplain told my mom. So my father had just received his first command of a submarine, and was very busy trying to ensure everything was ready before his departure. He had a steady stream of people interacting with, and the mess cook jumped in and asked him, "What do you want for your special meal?" My father had no idea what he was talking about. Assuming it was some dessert for tonight's dinner, sarcastically he replied, "Brussels sprouts." My father doesn't really joke, and is rather serious and not approachable, so I see why this would not be taken as a joke, but a command. So about 3 days into the voyage, my dad comments during dinner, "This cook really likes to use Brussels sprouts," since they've had them every day for lunch and dinner. One of the officers lets the cook know the commander is not really big on the whole Brussels sprout menu he has going. The cook's face goes pale when he hears this, and immediately tells my dad about the time he had asked him about his special meal, and he responded with Brussels sprouts. My dad feels like an idiot and apologizes for misunderstanding. It really isn't that bad if this is just me. The cook pauses. "Well, as a matter of fact, it was for the whole ship." My dad then asks, "Do the crew like Brussels sprouts?" The cook now admits there's been some grumbling about the addition of daily Brussels sprouts to the menu. My dad then asks how much there is. Surely it won't last the week, correct, if it's for the ship? The cook, now filled with dismay, relates there is in fact a 6-month supply of Brussels sprouts, and is taking up a lot of space. My dad then sarcastically said, "We might have a Brussels sprout mutiny on our hands." My father realizes he is the new commander, and he is not making very good impression with the crew by inflicting Brussels sprouts on them daily. Submarines don't just return to port or radio another ship to transfer supplies. They have predetermined rendezvous points with sub-tenders, or ports of calls. They can go months without surfacing or radio contact. My dad then orders a torpedo drill, and the Brussels sprouts were the ammunition. 6 months of Brussels sprouts were sent to the murky depths of the Atlantic Ocean. There was an immediate boost in morale. Well, I mean, you got rid of the food nobody wants to eat, but that doesn't necessarily mean you provided food that anybody actually wanted, so I don't really see how this was good in any way. Entitled Mom demands front row seats that weren't reserved for her. So this happened at VidCon, Australia this year. My friend and I had gotten front row seats for the send-off show, and we were about 45 minutes early. 5 minutes before the show, enter the entitled mom. She was dragging her kid to the front row, obnoxiously cleared her throat, and opened her full of BS mouth. Excuse me, we were sitting there." I glanced at my friend. I say, "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?" She says, "You know what I'm saying. My baby and I were sitting there before, and you took our seats." The kid looked embarrassed. He looked like he was 11 or so. I was like, "Man, we've been here since the last panel." She says, "Yeah, but we took those spots for the panel this morning." My friend and I just looked at her. Was she for real? "Sorry, man, but these spots weren't reserved when we got here." The kid starts to urge the entitled mom to stop. Says, "Really? Well, I left a tissue on the seat. You should know what that means, since you are Asian." I am Asian, but this took me by surprise. I didn't know putting a tissue on a seat was an Asian thing. I say, "Excuse me?" She says, "Yeah, you know. Anyway, these are our seats, and you should really move before the security guards take notice." We were really pissed now. "Sorry, lady, but you should know that these seats are for everyone. If you think a flimsy piece of tissue will win you these seats, you are very wrong." A few people around us have started to notice what was happening. "Didn't school teach you to give up your spot to those in need?" I say, "I'm sorry, but why are you in need?" "I'm in need of those spots. Now shove off." At this point, the kid was in tears of what was happening. He says, "Look, you just made my poor baby cry." She tries to hug her kid, but he flinched back and started to run off out of the auditorium. She took off yelling at her kid. Still in shock, my friend and I look at each other. At this point, the lights started to dim out, and we watched as the security guards shut the doors after the entitled mom and her kid ran out. I'm happy to report that the entitled mom wasn't able to see the show at all in the end. The poor kid deserves better though, poor thing. You know, we've heard lots of crazy logic on this channel, but thinking about this one, this gives me some wild ideas. Maybe I'll go to a movie theater, leave some trash on the seat, and then feel entitled to be able to come back later that day and watch all of the movies because I left something on that seat. Maybe if the manager's a Karen, she'll applaud you for it. "Oh, your security? Okay, fella. Order received and understood." So I used to work as a crew member for gigs. Sometimes at Wembley Stadium, London, and one particular time, in 1999, we're helping the set designer with his massive set, and they keep us on for a few gigs. Most load-ins for a gig, getting the stage up, the set, lighting, sound, etc., take a few days, but because of the roof on Wembley and the fact that there was a lot of pyro on this set, it would take a week. We all have our AAA passes, getting everything ready for the load-in, ramps all set, and we get told the trucks are going to be delayed, but not to set up the barriers again for where they are parked. We get to lie around chatting to each other, waiting for the trucks. We say hello to the security guys and bring them cups of tea every now and then. We're all cool and just enjoying doing nothing and getting paid for it. Then there's a shift change on the security, and Robo-Security pulls up in his tricked-out car. "Who are you lot?" he asks, and a forest of AAAs appear and are waved. "What are you doing waiting here?" I'm supervising the very, very hard work of dossing, so I say, "Alright mate, we're just waiting for the load in, but the trucks are delayed." He then replies, "I'm not your mate. I'm here to look after the security for backstage." Like the backstage for a gig at Wembley only needs him to make it secure. Okay. We're going to be here for a week, so I try to build bridges, and the conversation goes like this. I say, "Are you going to park there?" He says, "Yeah, I'm security." I say, "I wouldn't park there." He says, "It's parking in it, so I'm parking there. Talk to production if there's a problem." I say, "No worries, mate." He stomps off to protect the band, as he probably sees it. The trucks then start arriving, and as I'm supervising, I get to park them up. They arrive in eights, as there are 38 containers coming, and they drop the trailer and the cab goes off to get another. I'm asked about the car parked in the middle of the parking area for the trailers, and I have to tell them that he's security, and I've been told to take it up with production if there's an issue. An accord is reached without a word being said, and the trailers are distributed by how they are loaded in, but the first 4 all seem to be parked around Robo-Knob's car. We all get the trailers set and start the night-long load-in. A lot of it is just emptying the trailers and putting the flight cases where they need to be. So it gets to 6 in the morning, and we've been going hard since 11 p.m. the night before. And lo, Robo-Knob appears. "Where's my car?" I say, "It's where you parked it, mate." He says, "How am I going to get it?" I say, "Best speak to the production, as I'm not allowed to move them trailers now until next Monday." His bottom lip actually quivered and he walked off. We then got to see him picked up by his missus, her giving lip all the time for getting her up at this time. Well, this is what happens to those who don't listen. Guy decides he needs handicap parking spot more than my mom. Catches me on a bad day. So a few years ago, in the middle of good old Canadian winter, in January, my mom was heading to her car to go to work. Now, no one knows what exactly happened, but she probably slipped on some ice. She fell hard enough to slightly crack her skull, and then she bled pretty bad. My stepdad saw her outside and called an ambulance in time though. She had no memory for weeks on end, and her body wasn't working right for a long while after. Fingers and toes going limp or numb, or just not strong or working right. Basically, she was recovering for months. I'm also very protective of her and my siblings, since we all ran from an abusive home. So this takes place a few weeks after my mom got out of the hospital. She was using a cane to walk, as her arms and legs were still pretty weak at the time. She had a handicap card. She needed to get to her prescriptions from the store, and I had nothing to do that day, so I volunteered to take her. She lived in a small town at that time with only one major pharmacy, so we of course went there. And as the title suggests, both handicap spots were taken, so I dropped my mom off as close to the door as possible and went to find a different spot. But as I went by the other cars in the handicap spots, I noticed one of them didn't have a placard. This definitely rubbed me the wrong way, of course, since my mom, who really needs the spot, had to walk further, so I did something extremely petty. I decided to park directly behind the car and block them in and wait for them to come out, not really thinking of how it all looked. A little extra context, since I know we all enjoy that. I'm a huge metalhead, so I kinda dressed the part, even in early spring. So thinking back, it looks bad seeing that blocking your car into its spot, with your kids in the car. So continuing with the story, the guy comes out and sees me and immediately tears into me. He says, "Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing?" I say, "I'm just here waiting for my mom to get her prescription." He says, "Well, you can't just park there and block me in. I need to leave, so move." I say, "I mean, if you can park wherever you want, then so can I, right? Considering you took the only other handicap spot and my mom needs it, so I think I'll be staying right where I am." At this point, he's in my face, and there's some cussing back and forth. He tries to take my keys, and I threaten to knock him out in front of his kids. Then he decides he's calling the cops. It's a super small town, so there's not a lot going on, and an officer is there in 2 minutes. The police officer says, "Alright gentlemen, what's the issue?" The entitled dad says, "This kid is blocking my car for no reason. Arrest him or make him move." I say, "Yeah, I'm blocking him, but only because my mom needed this spot and he's parked here illegally." He starts to get the other guy's side of the story and looks at our vehicles when my mom finally comes out. My mom says, "Hey, what's going on?" The police says, "Hello ma'am, how are you feeling? Been a while since I've seen you. How's your head doing? I heard you were in the hospital for a while." When the entitled dad hears this and sees my mom, he goes white. Turns out that was one of the officers that can't, and checked on things my stepdad called for an ambulance. And he knew without a doubt she needed that spot. And of course, when she told him about the parking issue, I was told to move and given a warning, but I'm pretty sure he handed the other guy a ticket and gave him a serious talking to. Anyways, that's my first story for you guys. My mom's good now, nothing more than some pins and needles in her fingers and toes sometimes. And I never saw the entitled dad again, thankfully. You know, it's kind of funny and strange that a lot of my videos tend to be like unintentionally themed for a certain type of story. Like the other day it was all about like bad landlords, today it's all about like parking. I don't know how that works. But the question of the day always brings a nice theme, which is, what did a kid in your school do to get expelled? I live in a rural-ish Irish town, and our school was built next to a massive wheat farm. One day a kid brought in a plastic bottle filled with petrol and matches. He hopped over the fence at lunchtime and set the field on fire. Destroyed the farmer's entire plot. Apparently it was about 500k worth of crops. He also served time. It was pretty wild. You know, something I've noticed, it's like when adults commit crimes, it's usually in some way trying to benefit themselves. You know, like they're trying to steal money, or they are attacking somebody they don't like, or something like that. But whenever you hear stories of kids committing crimes, it seems like almost always they're just looking for attention. Like they're just out to do mindless destruction for who knows what reason. A very weird kid in my year at the time came into school with a huge amount of hairspray in his hair. The amount where your hair eventually sticks like gel, but without actually using any. The guy that sat behind him in one of our classes happened to be one of the worst behaved kids in the school, and he proceeded to get out his lighter and light his hair on fire. It didn't go up like if it were oil, but it definitely stayed alight long enough to see him running out the door with his hair smoking. Both kids were gone after that. Lots of hairspray used. I wonder which decade this came from. A kid escaped school on a Gordon food service truck during recess. They found him hiding in the Uncrustable sandwich box while unloading the truck when they got back to their little warehouse. Wow, this guy's already preparing for a prison break when he grows up. A dude smuggled a wine bottle. How the teachers found out? Well, the brass knuckles he was carrying in the backpack broke the bottle and spilled wine in the middle of the classroom. See guys, this is why you only try to commit one crime at a time. He would poop in a bag and stick it in somebody's backpack. He did this twice. First time he got suspended and a warning. Second time he got expelled. This was in 9th grade. Because it was just so funny the first time, you just couldn't resist doing it a second time, huh? Well, looks like that's all we've got for today. Sorry it was such a short one, but I guess that makes it easier to stick through the whole thing, so thanks for watching.